welcome everybody to this Ask Me Anything session in hardware product development and IoT, where our guest is Amaldev Venugopal. He's basically a senior engineering project manager at Tata Centre for Technology and Design at IIT Bombay, and he's worked on several healthcare startups and IoT startups. He even was a co-founder of a music tech startup. So welcome, Amaldev. We are very eager to hear from you.
Hi, thanks, Pratiksha. Thanks for a lovely intro. Hey, I hope everybody is staying safe right now. So yeah, maybe I'll just give a brief intro, adding to what Pratiksha was saying. So basically, I don few different hats in my like on my day-to-day affairs. So I currently lead a healthcare research group based out at IIT Bombay. It's called Tata Centre for Design and Technology. So therein we work on in a domain as healthcare. In the sense, we have a group of uh, teams working on healthcare specific problems, working on affordable healthcare and stuff like that. So we have other groups as well working on different areas like energy, pollution, water, education, etc. as well. So our group primarily focus on healthcare, but we do take up projects from other different domains as well. So our primary aim is to do translation research in the sense that either we do uh, um, uh, product development right from like end to end, or we take translation research from IIT Bombay faculty and take it out to the market. So that's basically what we do. So currently, two major projects which I can actively talk about in the public is one is in cervical cancer screening, wherein what we are trying to do is we are trying to develop a small portable hardware wherein uh, you capture the image of a cervix, and it can using AI and ML to predict, let's say, what grade of lesion it is in. So that's in cervical cancer domain. And one other major project which we are undertaking is telepathology. So what basically happens in that is like we are trying to digitize telepathology scanners to give people a sense of what that is. So let's say if so we are trying to do a tier 2 tier 3 city connect with, let's say, a tier 1 city. To give you guys a flow of what that means is, assume, let's say, there is a tier 2 or a tier 3 city, and there is somebody goes, so let's say there is some skin lesion there, okay, and somebody goes to a doctor and they say go get it tested. So what basically happens is that skin tissue gets biopsied, and you place that on a sample, and you send it off to a pathologist to for review, and pathologist looks at it under a microscope, and they give you a test report. So in a tier 2 or a tier 3 city, what basically happens is this entire process can take around 2 to 3 weeks. In the sense, from collecting the sample, you create a glass slide sort of a thing, and then you courier it all the way to a tier 1 cities where there are reputed pathologists who's going to look at it, create a test report, and send it back. So this entire process is cumbersome. So what we are trying to do is digitize the entire process.
Amaldev, sorry to interrupt you, but could you please hold your mic a little away
Right,
because there's a lot of disturbance due to that. Yeah, thank
right.
you. Thank you.
Now is it better? Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Uh, right. So what basically happens is, yeah. So we are trying to digitize glass slides, and we are able to get remote pathologists to comment on it, in the sense that you can. An analogy would be something like an email report sort of a thing, wherein a technician is going to load a glass slide into our device. It gets automatically scanned. So by a scan, I mean this is at like 40x or 100x images. So let's say a glass slide of maybe maybe of this size would contain around 10,000 odd images, and stitching all those things together, doing ML, and compressing that, and passing that over a low latency network is a challenge in itself. So that's couple of projects which we are majorly focusing on. So apart from that, there is few other projects in disaster management, a few other healthcare products which we can't really talk about as of now. Yeah, so that is overview of what I done in like IIT group. Apart from that, what I also do is I do consultancy work for companies. So I do get MNCs reaching out to me for either for technology inputs for their product development or end-to-end product development in itself. So that I do take it up, and apart from that, on my free time, I do mentor quite a few startups based out of Sinus, like the incubator based out of IIT Bombay, and I regularly work with hardware startups to help them take something from, like, say, an idea to how do you take it all the way to a production level product. So that's what I kind of do. Yeah,
Okay, very, very interesting stuff, Amaldev, and very important work too, right? Healthcare. So, talking about the broad healthcare industry and the technology being built for it, right? The health tech industry. What interesting things are there in that line of work, right? That are being developed. What important things? What game-changing things are being built?
I will maybe talk India specific per se, in the sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
that would help. Yeah, yeah.
right. See, the primary area of focus for me is to try to create technology related companies based out from India, in the sense that if you see, most innovative companies are based out in West, like, or outside India. And I do see, so maybe 5 years earlier, you could not see probably a single technology innovation company based out in India. It will be mostly SaaS or something on the domains of a copycat model. Uh, so when I mean by, let's say, pure hardware tech or pure innovation tech or pure science tech, deep tech companies, they are very few. You can hardly count them in your numbers to say that, okay, there is this company working on this, which is producing leading uh, product element tech in somewhere in the domain. So coming specifically to healthcare, in the sense that there are other, you could actually see, like, even in the COVID situation, right? So there are companies who are coming out with test assays specifically to identify, and, like, there are companies running like PCR machines to help detect COVID cases in under an hour and all that. So there is specific innovations which can uh, work in that domain, and there are companies in this domain as well, so which are coming about specifically in the health tech domain. If you see, if you are to create massive impact in a country like India, you need to be able to democratize product development, and also make it affordable, in the sense that, see, when we look at product development in, let's say, take the GEs and all those guys for that example, I get why their products are priced at a much premium oriented level, in the sense that they have an R&D division to run, they have a testing facility to run, they have hundreds of engineers to support and deliver. So if a company, if I would say a pure health tech medical company needs to come out from India, they need to cater to, let's say, the 1 billion plus population all its own. So somebody used to tell me this, in the sense that, see, how do you make $1 billion, right? Either you can have a product which, like, you make 10 products, each of them worth like 100 million each, or you create a product which let's say 1 billion people can use and pay $1 for it. So that is what is meant by scale in India. So if there is a healthcare product which you can really innovate and can have a mass impact market, that will be a game changer in the Indian domain. And I do think there are startups coming about in this domain per se.
Okay,
So that,
great, great to hear that. And no doubt that in India, healthcare, is in such a situation that many people can't afford it. So if things can be produced cheaply and distributed cheaply, nothing like it, right? So I'm assuming that is the goal of the design center and
right,
the startups you're working with.
right.
So
So yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
so could you please demystify what healthcare tech is all about? For somebody who's not necessarily into it or familiar with it, could you demystify how somebody gets into healthcare tech? Like if they're interested in it, how do they start building things and stuff like that?
So maybe I'll take a generalized approach. I got to know a bit about the background of few people over here. Most of them are from like early engineering phase or have some hardware background, I would say. So maybe I'll start with that in the sense like, see how. Okay, so let me start with like how hardware startups are different from, let's say, your conventional SaaS-based model startups. So hardware startups basically mean that you are producing some sort of hardware which can be, see, it does not mean that you sell the hardware per se. You can have a service model wherein you rent the service of the hardware to a solution provider. So I'm working with a couple of startups who are basing that as a model wherein uh, so let's a generalized example is like take a rental model, meaning like an abstract example is, let's say there is an expensive medical equipment. Okay, let's take an example of a CT scanner or let's say an X-ray scanner, right? Now, can you let's say a hospital might not be able to afford to buy that in itself, right? Okay, now what a startup might potentially look to do is they try to do a rental basis on that domain, in the sense that you pay us X amount of rupees per test you do, something like a cloud SaaS, hardware as a service model, which is called a HaaS. uh, in the sense that there is that domain. All right, now for that the primary objective of the company should be to develop a core tech. The core tech might be saying, okay, if you're specifically into healthcare, there needs to be some sort of healthcare. It could be diagnostic, it could be like a measuring instrument, it could be some, let's say, some parameter measurement. So it need not give a clinical level accuracy. It could be like as good as, like, let's say a wellness device. So the wellness devices would be your smartwatches and all those kind of gadgets. So here the core area is, let's say, a hardware which you are trying to sell it to a large market, or as a subscription model or something of that order to a largest customer base. Now, how this differs from a software model is you actually need to build some physical product. So that in itself is a different ball game. So why I say that is, this is not as easy as, let's say, a software SaaS model wherein you can get going with, let's say, having a laptop right in front of you. And if I want to say, okay, I want to build a software, I can code away endlessly for weeks on end and put put out a POC or a proof of concept, right? Without much like, what can I say? Without much input needed from the financial partner. So the your initial cost to build something is relatively very cheap. All you need is, like, if there is cloud services needed, that may be it. But even that is right now like very cheap, in the sense that you'll get like year-long subscriptions which are free. Now, how it differs in a hardware product is, okay, you have totally different stages. So one is potentially a ideation stage, which is same in, let's say, software. Now, second, how I would call it is, I take it as two different sections, in the sense, one is how a design phase, and second is an engineering phase. This is purely in hardware tech. Design phase is something like, okay, let's say I am building a phone, right? How is the phone supposed to look, right? So that will be the design. So it can look like this, it can look like, it can have a 360-degree display, or it can have, like, let's say, a camera here, camera on the back. It could be any number of things, right? So that is my design phase. So this is something which a designer takes up, and you try to create, you talk with customers and say, okay, these are things, how is a person interacting with the device, right? You see phones coming out every year with uh, like incremental changes, but all of that is part of a UX or a UI design, wherein companies hire groups to go sit with users to see how are they using this device, how are they using XYZ feature in your product, is that feature necessary in my next product line, something of that order, right? Now, then after that, what you basically do is, then you so this is design phase is a parallel segment. In that, I would say, okay, I'll try to list down what are the core feature elements which I need to have in my product. So again, if I go back to, let's say, designing a phone, I would say, okay, I need a front camera, and I need a back camera as well. So let's say I need two cameras to do some sort of depth detection, or to get a better picture or something. So I try to list down my feature sets. So uh, how personally I would like to do it is I group it into three sections. So one is like a must-have feature, meaning this product needs to have this feature before it. I can even call it a proof of concept. Second is the features which are good to have. So these are features which are slightly, not even, it's not a deal breaker, but it is good to have. So when I talk to users, they will say, okay, yeah, I think that is kind of needed. Right now, third set is, I would call it like a luxury feature set, wherein these are features which are not asked for, but like I can charge extra if I am adding. So let's say two cameras in my phone is perfectly good enough to take a good photo. Now I would say, okay, adding a third camera is going to give me like a blur effect or some portrait feature which is going to differentiate me in the marketplace. So this is that is not needed, but if I add that, I can put that as an extra added feature and then try to sell it, right? So again, how the major question I get asked is like, how is somebody going to identify these features? So identifying the feature set is usually coming from you talking directly with the customer. Identify who your customer is and go talk to them. So this is a service I need. Okay, what what are you willing to pay for it, and what are the services you are going to get? So that is a design phase. So I list down the major features. Now from the features, I try to figure out, okay, what engineering decisions should I do to say, okay, I need X feature, Y feature, and Z feature. What engineering effort do I need to make to help create something known as a proof of concept or an MVP? MVP is a minimum viable product. So when you do a hardware cycle, always figure out that you create a proof of concept always. So I don't have something lying around to show from my domain. Okay. So basically what happens is you try to define a product which kind of looks good, like, so how I personally call it as an engineering prototype, wherein it might look like shit, but it kind of functions, right?
So basically, you're trying to establish that this is a new technology that can solve this problem or something like that.
Right, in the sense it in the aspect is that, see, for so I'm trying to distinguish the fact between how it is different from, let's say, a SaaS model, wherein you can go from, let's say, right from ideation to a POC in one go. But that is not the usual case in a hardware, because you have repeated iterations to help you get to a POC or an MVP stage, because
So
there is.
you're saying that, let's say, getting to even the proof of concept or a prototype for
Right,
hardware is a much longer cycle,
right.
right?
Yes.
Typically, let's say 10 times more time than a software thing takes.
It depends on your project, and depends on what is it that you are building, because there are specialized tech which you might not get access to, right? In the sense that, let's say I want to make high-end optics. Okay, now I need to find a manufacturer capable, even for me to get a proof of concept done. I need to get a manufacturer, because I don't have the facilities in-house to build that, right? Now I need to find a manufacturer who is willing to help me build that. So that is not the case, let's say, in a SaaS model, wherein, yeah, everything is there in the cloud. You build and deploy on the fly, and there is no barrier of entry over there, except
Yeah,
of.
I understand. But yeah, actually, the audience might not even be familiar with the SaaS model, right? So they're
Right,
more from hardware kind of
right,
background.
right.
So yeah, okay, that is interesting. So that means even if you have your proof of concept ready, figuring out a manufacturer, right? Uh, in India, what is the availability of these manufacturers? And should you even think of going to, outside of India for these things? Because we've heard that some Southeast Asian countries especially, or even China, they can give you a lot of parts manufactured and stuff like that.
Depends on project to project basis. And see, to be fairly honest, when I was doing my first startup, we did like entire product development in India, development, manufacturing, entire end to end in India. So that was a proud moment for us because we wanted to actually yeah, the device is not here for me to show. So what? So again, if you Google it up, you should be able to find out. What we basically did is we built a very ultra thin sensor interface which can stick onto any guitar acoustic instrument, and you can play multiple beats with it, and like you can play like cello, whatever. So you help be a one man band when you're playing a guitar and stuff like that. So what we wanted to actually prove to the world was that when, so this was like 4 5 years ago, so we want to make sure that we could actually build something this great. So this went quite a bit viral back in the day. So all of that could be done in India. So but for that, the challenges needed to pull that off were immense. So there were days when we used to sit for weeks on in at the manufacturer's end, sitting in the production line, fixing production issues and stuff like that, and getting the accuracy needed for the product to be at the current state it was in. So we had like, when we reached out to manufacturers, so there were people who were like manufacturers actually quoting us this, saying, hey, why don't we, so in the sense we wanted a baseline quality which was to be assured. We said, okay, we can't compromise on quality. Their quality standards were not meeting to our requirements. So then we said, oh, you upgrade your facilities to make sure that this gets done. So we help them develop a test protocol, a production protocol, such that the quality is standardized across their other products as well. So you need a upgradation. So this was like kind of when Modi announced PM Modi announced the Make in India movement. But again, it was very early, very nascent. So currently, if you see, there are manufacturing setups which are coming about, which are kind of getting there, I would say. But again, product to product basis, it is very hard to find good manufacturing resources. That I can guarantee you in India, because there is, again, this is a problem which I see. Indians mostly have a chalta hai kind of an attitude, even to doing whatever in the sense. So if I say, okay, my spec is this and I need my spec to be within this bar, they don't care. They don't talk numbers and say, this is what my device output is giving, and you work with that. That is not how you deal with. So if I reach out to vendors in China, so there are also poor quality vendors there as well. But if you find your right vendor, you will understand that you will talk the same language. I say, okay, my tolerance limit is this. So if I were to, so to give you an example for one of our projects, so we were trying to get some part to machine, and we had like very strict tolerances for the metal parts. So what we did is we reached out to a couple of vendors in India, not couple, probably like 5 6 at least, and we had given the quotations, and so we given the POs to make it and all that, and all the parts which came in did not meet the spec, and this entire cycle took us like a month or more. So what I did, I reached out to my vendors in China and said, okay, this is a part which I need. So I sent out the design, and I got the part manufactured and delivered, customs cleared, all that delivered onto my table in under 7 days. So that is
Wow,
speed.
that's very quick.
And the funny part is the price is at par or even lower. I'm not
Wow.
I'm not joking here. I'm not saying bad things about the Indian manufacturing. There needs to be a subtle change which needs to come about, and that comes about only when companies start. See, all the big shop players like GEs and all those guys have branded manufacturers working with them, so they have a established production line. So I'm not saying those guys are at fault. Like, their manufacturing lines are good and they have established vendors, but for innovators and hardware startups, or uh, uh, getting into this domain, getting access to those facilities is not going to happen. So you are working with like second grade or third grade party vendors which are currently not up to the mark in Indian standards. So again, there are different.
I see, I see, I see.